Hi, and welcome back to Nat Talk, a channel where I give my experience and reviews on products that I own to help you make an informed decision on your purchase. In my previous video, I was talking about the Nothing Headphone A and telling you that it's such a great deal and that you should actually go out and purchase these. So in this video, I wanted to explain my decision and compare the Nothing Headphone A to the Soundcore Space 1 Pro and the Soundcore Space 2. I'll go through the pros and cons of each product and explain at the end why I still think that the Nothing Headphone A is the winner in my opinion. The reason why I'm comparing these three headphones in particular is because they all sit within very similar price ranges, between $200 and $250. You could opt to go even cheaper with, say, the Edifier range, but I assume if you're looking for something that's mid-range, these are the ones that you would be primarily looking at. I'm in no way affiliated or sponsored by any of these brands, so all these opinions are of my own, and my suggestions for you is also my own opinion. So we'll first start off with the Nothing Headphone A. I think the first pro is very subjective, and that's the design. I personally really like this design. It's very similar to the original Headphone 1, where it's meant to have a transparent cassette looking type, but now in the Nothing Headphone A, you can see that it's no longer see-through, no longer transparent, but I still do like this design. Another pro for this is the dedicated swivel right here to switch tracks. I know that it's very dependent on the situation that you're in and the use case, but for me, having this button to quickly switch between tracks is very helpful, particularly when I'm on my phone and I'm doing something else while listening to music. I wanted to skip to the next track. I'm aware that you may not really need this because if you're listening to music or you're just relaxing, you don't really want to fiddle around with anything, you just want to sit there and relax. But for me, it's something that I really like and I really enjoy. And when I go back to using the other two headphones where it doesn't have that switch, it is noticeable and it is annoying. Another pro for the Nothing Headphone A, or just the Nothing headphones in general, is the in-depth EQ. You're able to customize EQ to your liking, or if you actually don't want to bother and play around with that, they've got their own basic settings, or you can actually import from the community. Personally, I think the Soundcore Space 1 Pro and the Nothing Headphone A don't really need any tuning right out of the box. It can help, but if you don't want to fiddle around with it, I think it's perfectly fine to just leave it as is. These are also rated to have 135 hours of battery life with ANC off. It is the class leader and it is obviously going to be the best out of the three. Now moving on to the cons. Out of the three, I feel like the Nothing Headphone A is the most rigid. I don't know whether it's because of the way it's made or the way it's held together, but it doesn't feel as flimsy, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. For me, I think it's more of a con than a pro because it's a lot stiffer than the other two. I also don't think these are the most comfortable of the three. The ear cups are a bit stiffer than the other two, and it's also a little bit more shallow than the other two as well. You can get third-party replacement ear pads for these, but I don't know whether they'll be soft or good either. Moving on to the next pair of headphones, it's the Soundcore Space 2. This is one of the newer headphones. I actually got this one before I got the Nothing Headphone A, so these are still pretty fresh to me. So the pro for these ones is that it has a pretty decent battery life. You get about 70 hours of battery life with ANC off, or 50 hours with ANC on. Decent noise cancellation, and one of the good things about this, whether or not you will notice and whether or not it is really important, is it has a new technology. It's got Bluetooth 6.1. When I think about it, it's probably not necessary because I don't think you'll ever notice. 5.4 versus 6.1, it's not really a game changer in my opinion. However, one of the best selling points for this headphone is its wear detection. Initially when I purchased this headset, it was purely because it had the wear detection. I thought it would be very handy, very useful, but after a while I found out it's more of a gimmick than an actual need. It's something that's nice to have, but you don't really need to have wear detection. To me, I think these are the second most comfy out of the three. Moving on to the con, the first con is that it does not have a track button like the Nothing Headphone A. You can't skip tracks, you can't go back a track. It only has the volume up, volume down, on, off, and also ANC button. Of the three, I think this one will actually require some minor tuning out of the box because in my opinion, it does sound a bit muddy and bass heavy right out of the box. Now for the Soundcore Space 1 Pro. This is the oldest of the three headphones that I have, and I purchased this when it first came out back in 2024. So initially when I purchased these, there were quite a lot of pros on this. It has fast charging, you can just plug it in for about 5 minutes and you'll have a few hours worth of listening. So the ear cups have a 360-degree swivel, so it goes back and forth, that way. So you can lay down on any side you want. They're the most compact out of the three. So it's able to just fold onto itself and squish into a tiny ball. It has pretty decent sound right out of the box, so no tuning required. However, if you do want tuning, both of the Soundcore Space 2 and Soundcore Space 1 Pro has Hear ID if you don't want to be messing around with anything. The idea for this is that it takes measurements from your ear. It measures the frequencies that you can hear. So you indicate in the app when you're able to hear a certain frequency or not, and then it'll calibrate itself to what you can hear and your sound preferences. Of the three, I personally think these are the most comfortable ones. The ear pads are pretty wide and plush, very similar to the Soundcore Space 2, and noticeably softer than the Nothing Headphone A. The cons for this is that it also does not have a track button. So just like the Space 2, you only have the volume up, volume down, power on, and the ANC button. Of the three, this was the most expensive at the time of purchase. So when it first came out, when I first purchased this, there was a discount at purchase. I got these for $299 Australian dollars. However, now in August 2026, they're still available for around $250. So of the three, do I still think the Nothing Headphone A is the winner? Yes, purely on its value. I got these for $190 on sale, so that's already cheaper than the Soundcore Space 1 Pro. It has the longest battery life. In my opinion, it's got best design, and it already sounds decent without having to do anything. The Soundcore Space 2 at this point in time is also around $190. I think the Soundcore Space 2 would be the easy second choice because I don't think you should be paying extra to get the Soundcore Space 1. The difference in price doesn't really justify what you're getting. Once you tune the Soundcore Space 2, you can get it to sound pretty decent, pretty good. It's just as comfortable as the Soundcore Space 1 Pro. It has wear detection, which the other two don't have. And it's also got a better battery life than the Soundcore Space 1 Pro, which leaves the Soundcore Space 1 Pro third, and in my opinion, the headphone not to get if you're choosing between the three of these. I would just not bother with the Soundcore Space 1 Pro. One, it's the oldest of the three. I don't know whether that will affect your opinion or not, but I do like to get newer products and I don't want to spend my money on old products. Also, I don't think the cost justifies what you can get in other products. Currently, it's $250. You can get the Soundcore Space 2, it's cheaper with very similar sound quality. So while the Soundcore Space 1 Pro is really good, there are just better products for a cheaper price that you can purchase. So which then leaves the two options of the Nothing Headphone A and the Soundcore Space 2. I think you'll be fine with either choice. Nothing Headphone A has a better battery life with a different design, a unique design. The Soundcore Space 2 has a wear detection and also more comfortable. So either of the two are fine. Personally, I'm using the Nothing Headphone A because I like the design more. So I hope that gives you an overall picture of my choices, and I hope it helps in your decision if you're looking to pick up any of these ones. And thanks for listening.